today in strong support of H.R. 702, the Federal Employee Anti-Discrimination Act of 2017 is amended, and I also thank my good friend, Ranking Member Elijah Cummings, for his work on this measure and for his leadership and passion of our committee's ongoing efforts to ensure that the federal equal employment opportunity programs truly guarantee equal opportunity. Most agencies are careful to ensure that their personnel policies protect employee rights and that their EEO programs ensure that if discrimination does occur, employees can seek fair and timely redress. Unfortunately, there have been instances in which agencies fail to meet that standard of a model EEO program, and when that occurs, hardworking federal employees are harmed. For example, during the last Congress, the Committee on Oversight and Government conducted a number of hearings to examine how allegations of harassment and retaliation were handled at the National Park Service and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, including the Forest Service. In the case of the Park Service, the former superintendent of the Grand Canyon, one of our premier parks, received a report in 2013 documented multiple allegations of sexual harassment. Rather than determining whether further investigation was warranted or disciplinary action should be pursued, that superintendent attempted to bury the report. A year later, more than a dozen current and former employees sent their allegations directly to the Secretary of the Interior. The Secretary referred those allegations to the Inspector General, and after extensive investigation, the IG found, quote, a long-term pattern of sexual harassment and a hostile work environment in the Grand Canyon River District. The Inspector General's office also identified more than 20 other individuals who, quote, reported experiencing or witnessing sexual harassment and hostile work environments. And the IG confirmed further that previous reports of sexual harassment, quote, were not properly investigated or reported. As disturbing as these findings are, the Inspector General has also found instances of sexual harassment and retaliation at other parks, including iconic places like Yellowstone National Park and the Connolly National Seashore. While the Park Service has announced measures to address the serious shortcomings in its EEO programs, it is clear that deficiencies in those programs are longstanding and have hurt numerous employees. Similar chronic problems have occurred at the Department of Agriculture. The EEO program there has now been the subject of 2 extraordinary letters sent by the Office of Special Counsel to the President of the United States. In May 2015, the Special Counsel wrote to warn the President that USDA's civil rights program, quote, has been seriously mismanagement, thereby compromising the civil rights of USDA employees, unquote. And just last month, the Special Counsel's office wrote again to the President, finding that, quote, while the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights has taken positive steps to improve its performance, based on the significant number of cases that are still the subject of delays, we've determined that the agency response is unreasonable in part. USDA may need to devote more resources to the office to ensure that cases are promptly processed and hold senior supervisors accountable for management in this office. Such findings are not to be tolerated, and they highlight why this bill, H.R. 702, the Federal Employee Anti-Discrimination Act, is urgently needed. This measure would require that the head of an agency's program report directly to the head of the agency himself or herself. The measure would also require that an agency's EEO program be operated independently of its human resources or general counsel offices, ensuring that the EEO program is focused solely on protecting the civil rights of all employees and applicants. H.R. 702 would strengthen the accountability mechanisms central to the effectiveness of the EEO process. For example, the bill would expand the notifications that agencies are required to provide when discrimination is indeed found to have occurred, and it would require agencies to track and report whether such findings resulted in any disciplinary action. bill would also prohibit agencies from attempting to gag employees by banning policies, forms, agreements that seek to prohibit or restrict an employee from disclosing to this Congress, the Office of Special Counsel, or an Office of the Inspector General any information that might relate to a violation of any law, rule, regulation, or waste, fraud, and abuse. H.R. 702 is essentially identical to the bill we considered in the last Congress and which passed the House by a vote of 403 to 0. I urge members to support the measure again. As I close, Mr. Speaker, let me join with Ranking Member Cummings in urging the Senate to move in this measure as expeditiously as possible, without the addition of extraneous and harmful amendments that might seek to curtail due process rights of federal employees. Any employee who engages in discriminatory or retaliatory behavior or who harasses another employee must be held accountable. The American public expect no less. And current personnel policies and practices are adequate to ensure that this can occur. And there is no need for any amendment to this bill that would undermine or weaken employees' due process rights. Again, I urge all members to support H.R. 702, and I reserve the balance of my time.